A year ago this weekend, Hamas invaded Israel. The actual anniversary is October 7. It's tomorrow. It actually happened real early Saturday morning over in Israel. And that's going to be on the world's mind, has been this weekend, has been on my mind, certainly. And it will be tomorrow with observances, no doubt. What it makes me think about is Donald Trump and his relationship with Vladimir Putin, how Iran ties into all of this, how Netanyahu fits in. Obviously, he's the biggest player of all. He is doing what he wants to do, and no one can deter that. And it's not for me to say if anyone should deter that. Israel is in charge of its own affairs, as it should be. It has U.S. support, as it should. So in looking into these relations, the reason I looked into it is because it's complicated. And you have, I mean, Iran is really the evil mastermind with all of this. They don't have the resources to do their own attacks. They don't have the manpower. They can fund other groups. They can fund the terrorist groups. They can fund Hamas, Hezbollah, and put them up to it and harbor them. And that's what they do. And nobody wants instability in the Middle East other than Iran. And they're able to single-handedly drive all of this chaos through the terror organizations that they back. And I only mentioned a couple, and there are many. And Putin is aligned with Iran for support in the Ukraine war. And so that brings Israel into the position of, and Netanyahu and Putin are chummy. They're kind of buds, kind of like Trump is with Putin, where they have this personal relationship that authoritarians of a feather flock together, I guess, is the theory. However, we know that Trump detests Iran and almost started a war with them. We know he may try to do so again. It looks like Netanyahu is also trying to do that. And we have Putin there, who's trying to fight his own war in Ukraine, but he's also backed the Assad regime in Syria all along. It's back in the Arab-Israeli conflicts, decades ago. So that was a classic proxy war between Israel and the U.S. on the one side, and the Russia-backed Arab nations on the other, going back to 1967. It's just all so complicated. And there are certain things that never change, though. And that is that dictators like to dictate and that they don't like democracies, and democracies don't like dictators. And Israel is a democracy, but they have an authoritarian leader that is duly elected, and he hates terrorism. So when Netanyahu takes the fight into Lebanon, he actually took it into Syria a little bit. He's going after Iranian assets in Syria, but there's also Russia there. So Iran and Russia, that's not complicated. Iran and Russia are aligned. They are allies. So does Netanyahu bomb Russian things in Syria? Well, he did. And I'm sure it was maybe intentional, maybe not intentional. He probably just didn't care. He knew that those were Iranian assets and terrorist targets, so he bombs them. And whether or not he let Russia know, we don't know. I don't know. It's all so complicated. But where Trump fits into all of this is that he's buddies with Putin, and he will let Putin do what Putin wants to do. And if Trump were to be elected, he said it himself, like even before he takes office, within 24 hours, he will negotiate the end to the Ukraine war, which can only mean the Ukrainian surrender to Putin. And Putin's not leaving Zelensky in place. I mean, he may say he is, but we all know what happens to enemies of Putin. Remember the head of the Wagner organization that briefly opposed Putin's war here, even though Wagner was largely providing the manpower for it. That guy ended up dead pretty quick on a plane that went down. You know, that's I don't like Zelensky's fate if left to whatever Putin wants to do. So just take it step by step. Trump gets into office. He negotiates. We know Zelensky will. Just the support of the U.S. is everything for him. We saw him stand by. It looked like a hostage video. Stand by Trump a couple weeks ago after spending time with Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania at factories and with workers and smiling and having a good time and thanking everyone for the support. Then he's just stone-faced, having forced to stand by Trump as if he supports him, while Trump just makes up stuff about Zelensky's support of Trump, and Zelensky has no choice. He has to sit there and take it. Otherwise, he can't do anything if Trump takes power. And I don't think he can do anything anyway. I think that fate is sealed for Ukraine and for Zelensky if Trump were to win. But get past that. Maybe you don't want to support Ukraine. Maybe you would rather have our money go into Trump's friends' pockets rather than Ukraine's defense. Well, what that does is it frees up Putin to just have Ukraine's resources, in addition to not having all the expense of the war and all the lost manpower and equipment, which is making him very vulnerable, having to use up all of his military resources in Ukraine invasion. He just gets all of the resources of Ukraine. It is a kleptocracy. That's what Putin has always run. Kleptocracy is it's not a democracy. It's stealing. It's government by theft. That is a kleptocracy. That is Putin. So if he has Ukraine's resources now, we've seen some of you in the comments on yesterday's video about inflation rightly pointed out that the Ukraine invasion by Putin has driven inflation. Ukraine has oil and gas, but it grows food. It's the breadbasket of Europe. Back when it was part of the USSR, it was called the breadbasket of Europe. And it just supplies a lot of the world's food supply. And with being under attack by Russia for the last 2.5 years, that's driven up food prices around the world. So Putin just gets all of that if Trump is elected. He is immediately enriched. And we know what he does when he has the natural gas supply. He uses it to cut it off and to threaten Europe. We will know he will do that with the food supply as well. So where does this leave Israel, Netanyahu, and Putin, and Iran, and Saudi Arabia? MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. That's who was negotiating with Israel before Hamas did this attack a year ago to disrupt everything, because Iran cannot have the rest of the Arab world be at peace with Israel, like truly at peace, truly working together. Iran cannot have that. So that's why they launched this invasion with Hamas. If you suddenly have Putin not having to worry about his invasion of Ukraine anymore, well, he can support whoever he wants. Iran had his back in Ukraine. Well, he would now have Iran's back even more than he already does in Syria, in Lebanon, with the Palestinians. It would make it that much tougher. And he may like the fact that Netanyahu is a fellow authoritarian, a fellow strongman, but Israel is a U.S. ally first and always. They're not a true ally of Russia. So he would have no qualms with being against Israel in that situation. So now Iran and Hamas and Hezbollah would have a Russia that's fully on their side and not having to do anything in Ukraine anymore. In fact, not only would they not have to keep pouring Russian resources into Ukraine, they would now be able to take Ukrainian resources out of Ukraine and use it to their own evil purposes. And this is what's on my mind. It's been on my mind since last week with this anniversary coming up. And with just laying in bed, I remember reading about it when it happened and just being in shock, and all the thousands of people that were killed, and all the tens of thousands of people that have been killed in retaliation by Israel. It's complicated, and we're not going to solve it, but by electing Trump and just ending the Ukraine war and handing that country over to Putin and all of its resources, and giving Putin freedom to just not have to worry about that war anymore that he started and he keeps prosecuting. I mean, maybe you haven't seen a lot of Russian-driven chaos in the world, but you will. I mean, the lies and propaganda and misinformation that they're focusing for our election, that's nothing. I mean, that's just them going to work every day and doing their job. It's not really focusing on causing chaos in the world. So we can't take our foot off the gas over there. We can't stop supporting Ukraine. We can't just hand it over to Putin, which is exactly what Trump would do. He said he would end it within 24 hours. He wouldn't even have to take office yet. And that only means one thing, and we all know what that means. So that's it. That's what I wanted to cover today on this weekend with Israel on all of our minds, and it will continue tomorrow, and just a somber time. So hope everyone's safe today and enjoying your weekend, and we'll talk tomorrow.